You were chosen for this painful relationship, but not for the reason you think. What if everything you thought you knew about pain was a lie? What if the heartbreak that shattered you, the manipulation that twisted your perception of reality, and the emotional scars you carry were not signs that life failed you, but signals that life selected you? Chosen, not as a victim, but as one who was meant to awaken. Imagine this. You are sitting in a quiet room, scrolling through 1,000 distractions, and then suddenly a memory flashes. A fight, a betrayal, the empty silence after someone you loved left you questioning your worth. That moment returns like a wave crashing into a fragile shore. And once again, you wonder, why me? But not with self-pity, this time with quiet rage, with disbelief, with hunger for truth. Welcome to Buddha's story. We greet you not just with words, but with the intention to awaken something ancient in you. This channel is not about easy answers. It is about the journey inward, where suffering becomes the seed of transformation. You see, the story you lived through, the toxic relationship, the cycle of giving and never receiving, the love that turned cold, was never random. You were not the unlucky one who got caught in someone else's storm. You were placed there, and not by accident. There is a powerful, uncomfortable truth that few dare to speak. Relationships with deeply self-centered, manipulative individuals do not happen to weak people. They happen to people who were born with light, people whose hearts are open, whose spirits are generous, and whose very nature threatens those who have long since lost their connection to the sacred. But here's the twist. That very light, when not rooted in self-awareness, becomes a beacon for darkness. Your kindness, your empathy, your capacity to carry others, these were not flaws. But without boundaries, they became vulnerabilities. And the one who entered your life did not come to love you. They came to expose what you had not yet healed. Let that sink in. The person who broke you did not appear to destroy you. Their presence was a mirror, a distorted, painful, relentless reflection of the parts of you still aching for your own love. The part that still feared abandonment. The part that thought you had to earn affection. The part that stayed silent to avoid conflict. That mirror was brutal, but it was necessary. Even the teachings of the Buddha are not free from this theme. Siddhartha Gautama, before his awakening, lived in comfort and illusion. He was shielded from suffering, until one day he left the palace and encountered sickness, aging, and death. Those encounters shook him to his core. They broke his view of the world. They shattered his ignorance. And in that breaking, something awakened. Just like you. The pain you endured was not personal. It was sacred. It was not an attack. It was an invitation to look deeper, to unearth old wounds buried in silence, to question who you had become in your pursuit of love, and to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Let us revisit an ancient tale, a story that echoes this journey. There was once a young woman named Mira. Her husband was revered in their village, known as a wise and spiritual man. But behind closed doors, he was cruel, controlling, and emotionally ruthless. Mira, being devoted and spiritual herself, believed her suffering was a test. She endured, silently, until the day her child looked at her with the same fear she had once felt toward her own father. That moment shattered her, not from pain, but from clarity. She realized she had been repeating a pattern, one that was older than her marriage, one that came from childhood, from generations of women who were told love required sacrifice, silence, and submission. Mira left, not with bitterness, but with purpose. She later became a spiritual teacher in her own right. Her pain had not destroyed her, it had refined her. Many of us are Mira, and many of us are only now beginning to awaken. So I ask you now, not with blame, but with reverence, was the relationship truly a mistake? Or was it the most honest encounter your soul needed? Before we go further, if this message is stirring something in you, I invite you to support our work. Subscribe to Buddha Story. Your support is what fuels our ability to bring forward stories and teachings that are not watered down, but raw and transformative. If this message speaks to you, help us continue. Now let us return to the fire. Let us explore what it means to be chosen. You were not chosen to suffer. You were chosen to see where you abandoned yourself long before anyone else did, to see how you had shrunk to be loved, to see how you ignored your own intuition because it was inconvenient. These small self-betrayals, repeated over time, opened the door to someone who would reflect them back in the harshest way. But remember this, the person who triggered your awakening is not your master. They are not the author of your worth. They are merely the character who walked in to show you the script you have been reading from all along. And now, you are rewriting it. There is a Tibetan teaching that says, do not try to rid yourself of the enemy. Make him your guru. The narcissist, the manipulator, the betrayer. Do not seek revenge or understanding from them. Seek wisdom through them. Let their presence teach you where you had not yet healed. And let their absence teach you the strength of your solitude. You were chosen because you are the one who can break the pattern. You are the one who can say, this ends with me. You are the one who can transform pain into power, confusion into clarity, and trauma into truth. The road ahead is not easy, but it is real. And realness, like truth, always liberates. Now, I leave you with a question to reflect upon. Answer it in the comments below. Which voice have you followed more in your life? A, the voice that pleases others to feel loved. B, the voice that speaks your truth even when it risks rejection. Type your answer, A or B, in the comments. And remember, the voice you choose today can change the rest of your life. You heal not by returning to who you were, but by becoming who you were meant to be. After the storm comes the silence, but for many, that silence is not peace. It is disorientation. You wake up from the chaos of a toxic relationship, not with relief, but with confusion. Who am I now? What happened to the version of me before this pain? The instinct is to return to her, to find that earlier self who was trusting, hopeful, unscarred. But true healing does not come from going backward. It comes from walking forward, into unknown territory, into the version of yourself that the pain revealed, demanded, and ultimately shaped. This is where the real work begins. Not during the relationship, but after it. When the noise stops, when the manipulations no longer fill your days, when you are left with only yourself and a mirror you can no longer avoid. You see, before the relationship ended, you had already been losing pieces of yourself for a long time. That loss did not happen in dramatic crashes. It happened in whispers, in those quiet compromises that seemed small but stacked over time. You said yes when your body screamed no. You smiled when your heart ached. You apologized just to end the argument. You made peace not because it was real, but because it was easier than conflict. This erosion was not noticeable at first. But the self you abandoned slowly became a stranger to you. You adjusted to someone else's chaos by muting your own truth. You normalized dysfunction by calling it love. You carried emotional weight that was never yours to hold. There is a concept in Buddhist psychology known as wrong view, a perception clouded by delusion. Many who have survived emotionally abusive relationships discover they were not only manipulated by the other person, but by their own misperception. Not because they were foolish, but because they were human. Because the longing to be loved often blinds us to the absence of love itself. It is here, in this quiet aftermath, that the shift begins. But it is not automatic. Healing is not a passive unfolding. It is a deliberate decision, a commitment to sit with what hurts, to stop trying to feel better, and instead start feeling truthfully. Because truth, unlike comfort, will set you free. There was once a man named Elias. After ending a long, soul-draining relationship, he thought healing would feel like joy. But instead, it felt like nothingness. The absence of drama left him feeling hollow, unanchored. He missed the intensity, the highs and lows that had become his normal. It took months before he realized that what he missed was not love. It was addiction, not to the person, but to the cycle. Elias began to rebuild, but not from the ruins of what was. He did not try to recreate who he was before her. Instead, he asked himself a question few dare to ask. Who could I become if I stopped abandoning myself? The answer was not immediate, but it came in fragments. He started saying no. He stopped apologizing for his needs. He reclaimed his voice, even when it shook. This is the path of rebuilding from power, not trauma. It does not require perfection. It requires presence. Presence with the discomfort, presence with the memories, presence with the self you had once buried to survive. In Buddhist practice, there is the notion of returning to the breath, the idea that in every moment you can come back to your center. You can start again. But starting again does not mean starting over. It means starting from where you are, with eyes wide open, with lessons burned into your bones. Many people ask, how do I trust again after being betrayed? The deeper question is, how do I trust myself again after ignoring my own intuition? The betrayal that hurts most is not what others did. It is what we did to ourselves in order to keep them. This is why the journey after the end is more important than the relationship itself. Because what you build now sets the tone for everything that follows. Will you build from fear or from faith? Will you guard your heart behind walls or strengthen it with boundaries? Will you keep performing for love or begin embodying love from within? The woman who rises after heartbreak is not the same woman who fell in love. She is wiser, sharper. She sees red flags now, not as mysteries to solve, but as warnings to honor. She no longer confuses intensity with intimacy. She has learned that peace is not boring, it is sacred. And she will not trade it for chaos, no matter how charming it looks. One of the most radical acts of healing is to choose yourself, not as a reaction, but as a declaration. To say, I am worthy, not because someone else finally told you, but because you finally remembered. And when you choose yourself, everything changes. The people you attract change, the conversations you tolerate shift, the silence you once feared becomes a sanctuary. This is how you break the pattern, not by waiting for an apology, not by hoping the other person grows, but by becoming someone who no longer dances with dysfunction, someone who no longer gives love as a performance, but as a truth, someone who no longer begs for crumbs, but builds a table. In spiritual traditions, there is often a moment when the seeker is stripped of all illusions, when they are emptied so fully that only the truth remains. That moment is sacred. It is terrifying, yes, but it is also liberating, because from that emptiness, something new can be born. Not a version of you that pleases others, but a version of you that honors yourself. So if you are in the quiet now, if the noise is gone and only your breath remains, do not rush it. Do not escape it. Stay, because this is where the rebuilding begins. And this time, it will not be a reconstruction of your old self. It will be the emergence of your real self. Let the past crumble. Let the illusion burn. Let every scar become a doorway. Because you are not here to survive what happened. You are here to alchemize it. You are not returning. You are arriving at last.